Wonderful. Okay, I'm a meeting now. 3, 2, 1.
A warm welcome to all of you. We are very happy that you are joining us today for this webinar, and I would like to welcome you on behalf of the International Solid Waste Association. As you will know, we are a club of thousands of enthusiasts in municipal waste management all over the world. And this webinar today is organized by a special group of the European chapter, the EU chapter, where all the working groups deliver their expertise to, and we try to be the contact point in Brussels to deliver the knowledge of the ISWA technical experts into the political discussion. So not lobbying, I would say, just and only technical expertise. In my normal life, I'm the managing director of the Extended Producer Responsibility Alliance, so concentrated on packaging, but today we deal with all municipal waste. I'm very happy that we have a lot of great experts with us, like Dirk Nelen, who is one of the authors, the fathers of the current early warning report of the European Commission. So he has really a good understanding what is happening in the 27 member states. I think this is extremely important to know what is happening because the world in Brussels is looking usually different from the world in Finland, in Malta, in Greece, and everywhere. So it is, I think, for a good policy making, for a good discussion of all the stakeholders, it is impossible to understand the real situation everywhere. So after this introduction into the study and the findings, we will have some reactions from countries in danger, identified as difficult countries, colleagues from Romania, from Greece, and from Portugal, sharing with us very shortly their point of view with regard to the study, to the situation, what can we do? And then, of course, most important, our guider of the European Union, the European Commission, Wolfgang Trunk, he will tell us the solution, what can we do now as the next step, because I think it is not helpful to complain about the past. We have to see how we can fix the challenges in the future. And then we will try to have a little discussion between the speakers and us, and one more person, Ella, will join us with her specific point of view from waste to energy recovery, which is a part of the game as well, so that hopefully in the end we know more and know what to do, because this is the most important thing, that the waste acquis is not only fulfilled by Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, but in the end by all 27 member states. So that was my long introduction, but now to something much more interesting. Dirk, the floor is yours, and please enlighten us. What are the findings, and not only one slide that we have seen in all the media. Thank you. We cannot hear you. Dirk, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, we're on now, no?
Yes, now we can hear you.
And you can also see the slides.
We can see the slides, not in full mode, but in big mode.
You can see it okay?
Yes, please go on.
Okay. You made it quite a challenge, Joachim, but I'll do my best to provide some of the insights and interpretations of the big analysis, the report, the early warning report on the EU Waste Framework Directive and Packaging Waste and Packaging Directive targets, and of course, what's most important, the implications for the member states. My name is Dirk Nielen. I work as a researcher at the Unit of Sustainable Materials Management of the Flemish Institute for Technological Innovation, VITO, in Belgium. I'm also vice chair of the working group on recycling and waste minimization of ISWA. And of course, the topic is clear. I would like to start with the conclusions, which might sound a bit unconventional, but I think that's the best way to face the topic.
We are still seeing the first slide, huh?
Let me check. What do you see now?
The first slide, we see your screen. We don't see the full slide, or only the usual PowerPoint.
Yeah, that's a problem. Is it still like that?
Yes. So you can go on, but
No, but that's really
you
not
have to
the
go
idea.
on in your PowerPoint. Then this is possible as well, and not in this slideshow. We don't see this slideshow, the normal PowerPoint.
I think you have to go to slideshow and then from the beginning.
Yeah, that's
In
exactly what I
PowerPoint.
did. I will do it differently. Just a moment.
You can also choose to share your whole screen, and then
that's what I will
you're gonna mirror.
do. Yeah, of course. Yeah. That will be easier. So definitely this is the way.
Yes, now perfect.
Oh, I'm so happy. Okay, I'm sorry for that. You can now also see already the fireworks.
Yes.
Announcing the conclusions. Okay, then we are completely on track. So first on the early warning report itself. The early warning reports are published every 3 years before new targets become applicable to member states. The intention is mainly to identify the prospects of each individual member state of meeting the upcoming targets. And the idea, however, goes further than just providing you probably will meet the targets or your country probably will not meet the targets. The individual country reports also want to anticipate barriers to improve policy implementation and to provide guidance on necessary actions to take. A big part of the analytic work, as Joachim already mentioned, for preparing the early warning reports is done by the European Topic Center on Circular Economy and Resource Use. This is a consortium of European organizations that work in partnership with the European Environment Agency and VITO. The research institute I work for is the lead institution of this European Topic Center. That's why we provided a lot of work and insights in coordinating the making of this report for the European Environment Agency. Well, what about the conclusions? Some of the most remarkable conclusions, at least for me, is that out of 18 member states at risk of not meeting the 55% target for municipal waste preparing for reuse and recycling in 2025, 14 already were at risk for not meeting the previous targets for 2020. 14 of 18. This is obviously a problem, since the main objective of this early warning exercise is that it wants to help member states to prepare for reaching the targets. Another conclusion refers to the relevance of biowaste. Biowaste is the largest component, the most important component in the mass of municipal waste. And it was found that member states at risk of not meeting their recycling targets, their municipal waste recycling targets, had neither convenient separate collection systems in place or not a good coverage for such convenient systems. And they also, in many occasions, lacked available treatment capacity for separately collected bio-waste, even if this system for separate collection was not yet in place, but was already planned to be implemented. About the packaging waste recycling targets, we see that 70% of the member states are at risk of missing the 50% recycling target for plastic packaging. And probably or apparently two different issues, and we'll look closer to both of the issues, are making that plastic packaging is really a challenge to recycle. The first issue is that the plastic packaging design results in a very complex and heterogeneous packaging waste to be sent to recycling. And the second issue refers to the effectiveness of existing collection systems for plastic packaging in many member states. We will come back to that. So let's first have a look at the numbers on waste generation and treatment in the EU. The first one, when we look to the individual countries, at least that's what always shocks me a lot. The first thing that draws the attention is the enormous variation of the municipal waste generation per capita. The numbers range from less than 1 kilo a day for Romania up to 2.3 kilo a day for Austria. And I think it would be interesting, but this exercise hasn't been done yet. It would be interesting to analyze if and how the composition of the waste in both extreme cases is likely to affect also its potential for recycling. Maybe if a country produces less waste per capita, it might be more difficult to find interesting things in it that can be recycled. That's a possibility. Now, when we look at the total mass of municipal waste per country, what we see is that Germany generates more than 50 million tons a year, and it makes Germany the most important waste generator in mass in the European Union. So also the importance for the EU of Germany reaching the targets is very, very big. This I don't want to say with this that countries with less waste generation per capita are less important, also in absolute terms, because I think it's quite important to analyze both big and small contributors, because if we can gather insights from countries that account for only a modest share of the EU waste mass, these can be applied as, for example, best practices in big countries with a weaker performance. This might be interesting, and that's why it's relevant to assess the performance of waste management in all countries, big and small. With respect to packaging waste generation, we can see the same diversity as for municipal waste. So Germans on average generate more than half a kilo of packaging waste per capita per day, and Croatians do it with less than a third of this amount. It's an interesting observation. What I also would like you to note is that the amount of packaging waste per capita, that's on the left of the screen, has been increasing between 2010 and 2020, while the recycling rate of it has been stabilized. And this is quite opposed to the desired situation, where recycling rates would increase and packaging waste generation would decrease. Furthermore, as Joachim already said in the introduction, waste prevention is the most preferred option in the waste hierarchy. Now, with respect to municipal waste, we can also see that between 95 of the past century and 2021, waste generation per capita has remained, for me, surprisingly constant. But here the good news is that at least a shift can be observed very clearly, very obvious, regarding to the waste treatments, with declining shares of the waste being landfilled. That's a very important objective of European waste policies. And on the other hand, a rising share of municipal waste going to material recycling. So that observation brings us to the question of what policymakers, and in particular EU policymakers, can do to lower waste generation and increase recycling rates. The next question is then whether they can do enough to revert the current negative trends of stabilizing or even higher generation figures. I used some older slides on waste prevention to give a quick overview of instruments available for policymakers, since prevention should always be the policy priority. And the instruments are the same for recycling, and the categories are the same for recycling. So the most obvious instrument for policymaking is legislation. With legislation, we can, for instance, regulate market access. That's what happened recently with the Single-Use Plastic Directive. But regulatory instruments require important efforts for monitoring, control, and enforcement. Then we have economic or market-based instruments, including taxes, fees, exemption of taxes, extended producer responsibility schemes, etc. And their effects are expected to for at a longer term, but they include the change of consumption habits, and that might make the effects of economic instruments more profound and lasting longer. I say might. Obviously, other instruments for waste policy making are voluntary agreements with industry. And then it comes to my head the Circular Plastic Alliance and the pledges made in the frame of this alliance by industry. And of course, finally, other instruments like financial instruments are also available, and these refer to public investment in infrastructure, for instance, and also green public procurement. So the first question to answer is whether these instruments available to policymakers really do work. Because if they don't, we have a serious and fundamental problem. And that's one of the things that we have tried to achieve, to analyze in the early warning reports. Do these instruments really work? They are available, but are they effective? The instruments that were analyzed for this early warning report include market-based and or economic instruments. In particular, we looked to the implementation of landfill and incineration taxes, pay-as-you-throw systems, separate collection, extended producer responsibility schemes for packaging, also others like deposit return systems for packaging, packaging taxes, among others. All these elements were studied in the early warning report. And what did we find out after doing this per country analysis? In general, we observed that indeed as Joachim already expected and hoped for, that landfill rates are lower in member states with landfill taxes. We also saw that the weak performing countries, in particular, the 5 countries that have the weakest performance in achieving the recycling targets are Portugal, Greece, Cyprus, Romania, and Malta. We see that these weak performing countries lack convenient systems with high population coverage for bio-waste collection, for instance, the last column. While all the well-performing countries, they have such collection systems in place. Weak performers also are typically, or have been typically, hesitant to introduce solid, strong pay-as-you-throw systems. So what we can see from this graph, from this analysis, is that at least the instruments available to policymakers do work. I think that's a relief. So if these instruments are working, what could then be the problem? Shouldn't then all member states just implement the same waste policies and using the same instruments, of which we know already that they work? Because it's very obvious that we have a real problem. We can see from the analysis that not less than 10 member states are at risk for missing both 2025 targets, the one on packaging and the one on municipal solid waste. We also observe that there's no country being on track for packaging recycling, but not for municipal waste recycling. So the upper left quadrant is empty, no countries there. From the analysis, one of the key conclusions for me, at least, and I want to share that with you, and maybe you have a different opinion, is that the success of policy instruments for improving waste management performance was not guaranteed by simply implementing the instrument. And I think that's a very, very relevant insight, because economic instruments like EPR systems, landfill taxes, etc., only seem to work if they are well designed to operate in the country's specific context, and if there are clearly defined responsibilities for meeting the targets. They only work when support and, very important, enforcement mechanisms are in place. How did we come to this conclusion in the process? Member states shared with us a lot of very valuable information, for instance, on the relevant pieces of legislation in the country. The member states listed the responsible authorities. They explained how the responsibilities of authorities and possibly other stakeholders were defined in their country. And also we invited the member states to describe the consequences of not achieving national or local or regional targets. And personally, I believe that these insights were like the most important outcome of the early warning exercise, more important than the numbers. So in the next slides, how many minutes I have left?
See if you can finish within 5 minutes, that would be great, because you
5 minutes will be absolutely possible. Yeah.
Super, danke.
Okay. So one of the most challenging topics. So we see implementing the instrument is not enough. We need a whole other set of actions for the instruments to be effective. And I think that one of the most challenging topics when we want to boost recycling, and that's why the targets are there, is the perspective we take. We can look to recycling as a waste treatment, framed into the waste hierarchy principles. But then, in a circular economy, recycling is then the least desired way for treating waste. If we look to recycling only as a waste treatment, we want to produce more kilos of recycled waste per ton of generated waste. It's about efficiency in recycling and yield, the kilos. But in a circular economy, however, we should take a very different perspective. Then we should start to look to recycling as a production process. And what do we produce in the production process? We produce secondary raw materials. And these secondary raw materials should be absorbed by industry. They should replace primary raw materials in an industrial process. That's the one of the main objectives of circular economy. We want to avoid extraction and use of primary raw materials. So as an alternative, we have these secondary raw materials. But now, if recycling is a production process instead of a waste treatment, we have to look further than recycling rates, expressed in kilos. Secondary raw materials production now is about quality, about traceability of the waste, also about security of the waste supply. I must be sure that my waste source, my feedstock waste, will not disappear or change completely with respect to quality, and above all, economics. The process must make economic sense. So if we start to talk about, okay, we have to sell secondary raw materials as an output of a recycling process, we have to look to markets. And what do we see in the early warning results? That where we have major markets, basically for glass, paper, and metals, we also see that most of the countries have a high share of the population covered by high convenience collection of these waste streams. We also see a high share of population covered by high convenience collection for plastics. We will come back to that. So that explains, and the maturity of the market explains in part why some of the packaging materials are recycled efficiently, and why recycling targets are easily achieved, but this is not the case for plastics. We have made for the European Environment Agency, we have made a report on this. It's called Investigating Europe's Secondary Raw Materials Markets. And there we looked into each of these different packaging materials, glass, paper, aluminium. We also look to biowaste and construction and demolition. Also very important, textiles. Half of the textiles is plastic, so that will become a relevant issue when collection will be mandatory also. Separate collection will be mandatory in the EU. So we have studied this, and we see, okay, we have here some non-major markets, and plastics is one of them. If we have to look to recycling as a production process, we have an issue with feedstock supply. You see a guy with bags of separately collected PMD containing plastics, but the bag that he holds in his left hand has a completely different composition as the bag that he holds in his right hand. When we see how is primary raw material feedstock supply done, we look to the image at the right, and we see pipelines. We have supply in big barges of a very homogeneous material to start our production process with. What's the problem? The left feedstock supply system will be more expensive, more difficult, more challenging than the right one. That's why it's virtually impossible to produce recycled materials of quality, on-spec materials at a cost that is lower than the primary raw material production. Then the last slide, at least that's what I hope for. Yeah, the last slide is about these collection systems. We had a very important and relevant project that finished in 2021 or 2020. It was called Collectors. And in Collectors, we studied the different collection systems with an emphasis on packaging waste. So there I have these 4 words that characterize the value chains on recycled packaging raw material: disconnection, fragmentation, oversimplification, and also over-expectation, both from the consumers and the policymakers about what recycling can bring. But I think my time is over now, but we will share, I hope so, the slides later on, so then you can easily go through them and look with more detail to these conclusions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dirk. A lot of very interesting insights. A first reaction from my side, you said 135 different collection systems. I think it would be very interesting to understand how many different governance systems are behind this, because I think usually the governance, the structure in a country, who is responsible for what and so on, is determining the variety. I think that would be perhaps another wonderful study in the future. But now, much more important from my point of view, from the theoretical part to the practical field, to the view of our member states, to people, friends, colleagues who are living and especially working in these countries, trying to improve the situation, trying to live with the situation. Perhaps we can start with Greece. Our friend Yanis, Greece, for waste, for several matters, you are sometimes, quite often, in the media, and on the other side, I know you personally minimum for 25 years now. I know how you are fighting every day to improve your system, but still it seems that your Formula One car is driving like a bicycle. So how do you see this? How do you see this? How can we help you to speed up?
Okay, hello to everyone. Let me share a few slides. Okay. And I suppose that you can see my first slide or not?
Yes.
Okay. Very few slides, just to tell you that, yeah, you are right, Joachim. I'm nearly 30 years in this business, and I actually am the general manager of the EPR scheme in Greece, which is responsible for packaging waste recovery in Greece, one of the 2 systems that operate all over Greece. Just to give you the system structure, it's very interesting that to my knowledge is the only system that the Central Association, the EPR system in the EPR scheme in Europe, if I'm not wrong, that the KEDE, which is the Central Association of Municipalities, is a shareholder in our system, which was a very positive decision that was taken 20 years ago. And I think things could be worse if the municipalities were not on board. Anyway, you can see the activities of HERCO, mainly with the system structure, with the collection infrastructure and everything, but we want, I'm not gonna spend a lot of time here. So just to give you an idea, the packaging recovery projects are all over Greece, 96% population coverage, with a lot of bins, recycling bins, a lot of collection vehicles, because all the capital expenditure is covered, and the bins and the trucks are given to the municipalities by HERCO. 31 sorting centers all over Greece operate right now, so it's more than 520,000 tons that were recovered in 2022, out of which almost 500,000 tons is packaging waste. The rest is mainly newsprint. So you can see that the recycling rate of packaging in Greece, these are of course, the data for 2019, and that's a problem because HERCO has already sent to the Ministry of Environment, of course, in April, last April, the figures for 2022, and every year we do that, but I don't know why Greece does not send the new data to Eurostat. Anyway, it's 60.1% the recovery, the recycling rate of packaging for 2019. And it's very good to have in our mind that 95% of that national results, of these national results, is contributed by HERCO. So packaging waste recycling in Greece is more or less HERCO. And this is the diagram of our results. The green, of course, is the percentage of targets for 2025, for the EU and the national targets too. And the blue one are the results. If you wonder why we have results more than 100%, you will see later on that it's because of the very high free riders that we have in Greece. So we collect and we recycle packaging waste from producers that they don't contribute to any of the systems in Greece. And this is a diagram. If we put the results of HERCO just only for HERCO, and we try to put it on a national level, so we can see that it's not the same situation as I believe in other European countries. Glass is really a problem here in Greece. We would come back perhaps later on with that. And plastics, although HERCO fulfills the target, will be a problem for Greece. But we should have in our mind that this is only the results of HERCO. So perhaps there are other systems that will contribute to that, although I don't believe it. And that's the most crucial problem. Free riders over 40%. And that means that almost another HERCO is not contributed to any of the two EPR schemes. And that's a real problem because we are trying to fulfill the targets with the fees and the income coming from only half of the packaging waste material in Greece. And this is a real problem, which is the authorities are not able to tackle that problem nearly now 20 years since we have that legislation. And the situation is not getting better. So the last two slides, the drawbacks in packaging waste recycling. I think it's the lack of decisions and the weak law of enforcement, if I can give you a title. First of all, the free riders, as we saw earlier. HRA, which is the Hellenic Recycling Agency, it's the authoritative body for recycling, which operates under the Ministry of Environment, has failed to play its role. I think that the last, for example, at my knowledge, the last time that the board of directors in HRA was took any decision was last December. So I doubt if it operates at all. So there is nobody that controls and gives the, I would say, the path and how we would go on with the recycling, packaging waste recycling Greece. So the operating field of the two EPR schemes is not transparent. For example, it's not so easy to find the results of the two EPR schemes publicly, and I'm not referring to HERCO, and it's not leveled. I will give you later the example. The effectiveness of each EPR scheme is not supervised and controlled, and that's a problem. Just to give you the idea, we are here in Greece, we are in a distorted pseudo-competition, I would say, situation. The recycling fees for each EPR scheme are determined by HRA. That is the authoritative body of the state. And after 12 years of keeping the balance between these EPR schemes, there was a decision that HERCO should increase the fees. This caused a great imbalance. And you can imagine that if this is combined with the lack of any audits or any other criteria, such as what is the efficiency of the EPR schemes of the operating EPR schemes? What is the cost analysis of the methods that they use? What are the recycling results? And all this obscure situation leads to an apparent lowest cost solution and not to the most efficient solution from an ecological point of view. That is, producers would easily prefer a low-cost solution and not paying attention to the actually results of the recycling. The above situations results in jeopardizing the viability. Yeah.
I'm afraid, dear Yannis, we will have to move now to the next speaker because of the time. But we still have time for further details in the discussion. Okay, I'm sorry for that.
Okay, there's one slide that I could say. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry. Going from Greece to Romania, so not so far away, I would say, but as far as I know, again, a totally different situation, totally different structure of your waste management in the government and so on. But although it is different, you share the same challenges. I don't see any chance at the moment that you fulfill the targets, but there is goodwill of the people. Marius, what can we do?
So it's good afternoon, everyone. First, I'm glad to be here. So the situation in Romania, and as the report highlighted, the major problem in Romania are the following: limited implementation of the central government policy at the local level. We have a huge problem with the implementation of the local level. Second challenge for our waste management system is the lack of sufficient infrastructure for separate collection and treatment. And the third one, the report stated that is the data quality issues on the generation of packaging waste to avoid underreporting. But I said we have a problem with data quality for all packaging waste. Entirely true, the entire statement of the Commission report. So what is the situation based on these characteristics of the country? First, I will refer to municipal waste. Failure to reach the target for recycling target for municipal waste, it's imminent in 2025. And it's not because I say so, it's just because the recent audit of the Romanian Court of Accounts which was done in April 2023, shows that only in 14 counties from 32 counties, the integrated waste management system is completed. We got the money from European Union in 2007-2013, and for 32 integrated waste management system, it's working only 14. No chances to reach the target for recycling for municipal waste. We need a dramatic improvement because the current situation in Romania for municipal waste is 13.7%, and we need to reach 55% in 2025, which is not possible. We should start from yesterday to implement some such important measures. This is the municipal waste, which is quite clear for us that the target cannot be reached in 2025. Okay, and the packaging and packaging waste, reaching targets is under question mark. We achieved, based on the report in 2020, a target of 39.9, let's say 40% recycling target for packaging waste. In the last period of time, things improved. But what really happened currently in Romania? We decided in Romania in 2018, based on a feasibility study, to implement a deposit refund system for one-way packaging. I'm really stressed for one-way packaging, and you will see later on why. But currently in Romania, the public opinion, sometimes some of the authorities, are chasing nice stories, forgetting the core situation. Increasing the performance of EPR scheme, PROs, on a separate collection from a household will be critical to reach the targets. DRS do not guarantee the fulfillment of the targets because their contribution to the national packaging waste recycling target is quite minimal. Let's mention that in the first 2 years, the target for such packaging in a DRS system versus PRO, the targets are almost similar, so will be not improved. Of course, in the long run, DRS will increase the target, but still the contribution will be minimal. But my advice for all the European people involved in the packaging waste management to using a quota for CNN, stay tuned, because the DRS case in Romania should be a good lesson to learn for all other European countries that they want to implement DRS. So at the moment, we expect to get some like a 200 million euro to develop separate collection through ecological island with digital collection with card between the blocks in the big cities. And with the DRS, we expect that in 2025 we can reach the target. But let's see how it's working both model in the future. I took the opportunity that was offered in the structure of the event related to the current regulation in debate, the packaging regulation in debate. First of all, I have to admit that I was reading all the impact assessment report, which is very important. So it's focusing on reduction of the packaging waste, but also in improving the functioning of the EU internal market. So that are here, I would like to present our insight and our concern. One of the concerns is related with the necessity of the harmonization on EPR reporting system and eco-modulation, because we should have a standardized such an eco-modulation, or at least some criteria, because already producers and importers, they are asking what will be the future in this regard. Second, I'm referring to the our situation with the DRS. We started to work for the DRS 5 years ago. And at the moment, we assist the public opinion, like the controversy between the state, which is shareholder in a DRS, that they want to open the DRS in 30th of November. And you have the opinion of the management of DRS that they said they cannot open the system on 30th of November because the system is not ready for such huge deployment of resources. So based on our consideration and our experience with DRS, our recommendation is such a decision to implement the DRS in a country, considering the particularities and the complexity, should be always stays in a member state decision. Last but not least, based on our experience, and the last experience, I would like to refer our concern referring to labeling, because the reason we want to have a regulation is to not only to prevent the waste, the negative impact of the waste, but also to avoid any barrier on EU internal market. And we already face some problems with the labeling, between labeling in EPR, labeling in DRS, labeling in importer, labeling with exporter, and so on. So that should be really considering, treated with attention, considering the particularities for all the countries, because here are the labeling. Okay, most of the measure of the regulation are related to prevention. That's right. But some of them are referring to labeling, and that's labeling just created some problem, at least in Romania, but it's not only one country. And the last is referring to reuse. I was reading the regulation, the impact assessment, and I saw the mandatory reuse target. How they fit mandatory reuse target with DRS for one-way packaging? Because once we decided for reusable target, then we redimension the DRS model. That's from my side, from Romania. Just a few thoughts.
Thank you very much, Marius. I think we could, just for 3 or 4 topics, we could spend the whole workshop a full day and still. So thank you very much for your contribution. Moving now westwards to Portugal, to a good friend, Fernando, being active since forever as well, trying to run a municipal waste company solution, providing best service to your inhabitants. And I know that you are doing a great job, but still,
okay,
I think you could continue to work for the next 50 years. Huh? Please share your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Joaquin, and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. So first of all, the comment about the report. The report for us is very correct. We agreed with the picture that we can see in the report. For us, it's important to notice that the correct implementation of the EU waste legislation is crucial now for Portugal, involving measures to decrease the waste generation in our street containers, for instance, as they are always open and free to the citizens. More or less 20% of that waste are not urban waste. We have a mix with construction and demolition waste, with electric and electronic waste, textiles, and so on. And in these conditions, it's very difficult to control the situation and to have better targets in the country. We need to convince, it's important to convince our municipalities to change this system, because in Portugal the collect of the waste is made by the municipalities, only the treatment is made by these companies like Lipor and other companies in the country. Also, in the majority of the case, we don't have a good cooperation between the municipalities and the entities that treat the waste. We need the cooperation, and in the last master plan for Portugal, the PSU 2030, we have some indications by the government to have a better relation between these two important parts, because it's important to have a good collect of the waste because after we need to have good products at the end of the treatment. The problem in Portugal is also that the majority of our production of waste is collected and sorted, with containers located not so very near the houses, and with more containers is another problem. We have more containers to unsorted waste than to separate materials, and is why we have a lot of recyclable materials in the bins for the unsorted waste. After that, also another problem we have here is the majority of this waste goes to the MBT plants. And this MBT plants has a low performance, and at the end, the quantity, but most important, the quality of the recyclables and the compost is very poor. We have a lot of, in the most of the case, we have a big contamination with plastics and glass, and it's not so good to transform and to recycle that materials. Only a few municipalities, more or less 10 municipalities in 300, has a door-to-door selective collection, and we need to increase this system, because with that we have more quantity of materials and better quality also of that materials. Only no more than 5 municipalities has a paid system installed in their area. So in this case, the cities don't have great incentives to sort the waste. On the side of the treatment, the big problem starts with the low price of the fees and other taxes in the landfilling. So to put 1 ton of waste in landfill costs no more than 30 or 40 euros per ton. So it's not good, and we need to change this part. Only in the 2 metropolitan areas, Lisbon and Porto, the situation is better, because we have in both of these areas an integrated system with sorting, composting, and also waste-to-energy plants, and with a good cooperation with the municipalities. So in this case, the performance remains better. And for instance, in the case of Lipor, in the Porto region, we put in landfills no more than 2 or 3% of waste per year. Is a good figure. In conclusion, what we need very urgently is to change this bad picture, is to intensify the system and the practice to the prevention near cities and companies, to decrease the per capita of the urban waste production is very important, and we fight against that. Is to develop the separate collection of bio-waste. We start only in the last 2 years we have a big start to separate the bio-waste, promoting this streaming. 35 or 40% of our waste is biomaterial, so it is very crucial for our country, also because our soils in a very important part of the regions are very poor. In this sector, we need to understand that the quality of the collect of the bio-wastes is very important because the final utilization is the product is not so good. The final destination is also the landfill, and it's very, very bad. In our opinion, and to fight definitively against the landfill, it's very important to have an increase of the waste to energy capacity of treatment. Now we have in Portugal only 19% of waste going to waste to energy, and we believe that one more line in Porto and one more line in Lisbon can help the other systems to fight against the landfill. That is the most important problem for the next years, and our government are now studying some measures, some emergent measures to fight and to control the situation of the landfill. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fernando. Great to have you with us. Now, I would like to give the floor to our colleague from the European Commission, to Dr. Wolfgang Trunk. I hope you managed to be back on Teams. Yes, great. I think you are now since about 1 year in the waste unit, and you are in the middle of the mess somehow, dealing on one side with new legislation, trying to facilitate the discussions between the Parliament and the Council, and on the other side now, I would say a new massive job is raising to work with the member states on the old and the former legislation. So I think you are not really bored every day. So what is your point of view? We heard well, we saw that there are competent people in the member states. I think this is already good news to have some counterparts with whom you can work. Or do you intend to put now the study in the drawer and forget about it? So what is the view of the Commission? How can we go on? How should we go on now?
Yes, thank you for the kind invitation. I still love my job, but it's almost 2 years that I joined the DG Environment, and indeed my first big project was the packaging and packaging waste regulation. Then I got earlier this year 2 other amazing areas, which is in general the Waste Framework Directive, which means also the early warning reports, but the whole concept, the holistic approach on waste management. And I think this will be maybe the most interesting topic for today's event. But also I have let's say I have chef the field for the new textile proposal for the targeted amendment of the textile of the Waste Framework Directive for textile waste, but also this is another element, another mosaic stone to make progress in a more sustainable waste management over all waste streams. And I want to explicitly praise the first presentation from Dirk Nelen that I partly missed, but nonetheless I think it was already a very good analysis of the situation. You might be aware that we also issued with the early warning report some very concrete fact sheets for every member state at risk. So we have already invested a lot in analyzing the specific national situations and to give advice how to get on track to it. But I think we have to face it, and Mr. Nelen mentioned it as well. We don't have just to look at the early warning report about the 25th targets. the big problem is that we have already had a similar situation some years ago, 5 years ago, and the situation did not improve. In the opposite, it is even the number of member states at risk for some specific targets even increased, and this is really an alarming let's say an alarming trend effect that we, for instance, in the area of packaging, and the Romanian speaker, he was talking about the packaging. This was also a fact that we, with the new packaging legislation, we try to have a shift in the approach. We want to tackle the everlasting increasing waste generation trend by coming up with a regulation, and now it's very important, a regulation with product requirements. So we put directly much more responsibility and leverage on the concrete, what happens in the waste management and in the waste generation area, much more responsibility on the specific economic operator in the waste value stream. So this is, I think, an important, let's say, a message learned, but nonetheless, we still the targets are still one, or the pillar, at least in the Waste Framework Directive, but also in the existing packaging waste directive, also in the landfill directive. But we also still, you can see we also still continue just to copy the packaging targets into the new regulation. So we are continuing this, but we have, apart from these recommendations that we made in the margins of the early warning report, we also come with these new kind of other measures. You know, we have a kind of a plastic tax, plastic packaging tax, which should address the problem of packaging waste generation. And also we come up with now, as I said it, with this commission, with this new approach in the packaging, that we want to shift to more closer to the economic operators. So this is something where we see, but but another important element for the future is that we have to already in place, for instance, in our directive, some specific tools to help the whole municipal waste management. Namely, it was already mentioned that as of next year, there must be a separate collection for the bio waste. And I think this was already mentioned. This is one of the main streams in the municipal waste, which will help us to have a better management if this significant volume of waste is taken out of the mixed municipal waste. Then I think the remaining municipal waste can be managed much more efficiently and much more sustainable. And this is one area. Another area is, as I mentioned, textiles. We also foresee that for textile, you must sort out the textiles, or at least the member state by 25 must sort out the textile from the municipal waste. So this is, at least it is an obligation to have separate textile waste collection systems in place. We did not come up with a target. Again, we see that these targets are very difficult to enforce and to make it in reality. But we at least expect that also in the area of textile waste, we will get more into the out of the municipal waste. So I think these are, for instance, concrete measures where we want to focus on a separate waste collection, taking out, or let's say alleviating the problems in the municipal waste generation. In terms of the landfill, this is really also with respect to sustainability. The Portuguese speaker, he mentioned that the costs of landfilling are still too low. So we have, of course, to internalize all these external costs that are combined with landfill. And I think here in landfill, we will come up with, this is one of our, probably one of our next priorities to come up with some revision of the landfill directive to be there more to ensure that we do more and we achieve at least what we see for 2035. So this is but now within 1 minute, my last minute, I will dedicate to the packaging. Also here we are really making with a new proposal a lot of very concrete measures. First of all, to reduce packaging waste generation, but also, for instance, by requiring a DRS system for mandatorily for PET bottles. We really want to take out these volumes, these the significant volumes from the plastic, separately collected plastic waste, in order to allow also a better high quality recycling of the PET bottles, but also to even within the remaining, if you take out the PET, with the remaining plastic waste in this, also to increase the efficiency of the recycling and to have more high quality recycling within this. But again, we have also, let's say, kind of evidence that this from the member states who have it already, that taking out the PET bottles from the EPR system, EPR collection system, that this improves also the efficiency in the packaging, in the plastic waste recycling, to improve also the recycling rates. I think this is all for the moment from my side. I hope I was not too long, and I give the floor back to Joachim.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Wolfgang. I think DRS is another topic for a workshop with a lot of diverging ideas and facts and figures. But let's stick today to our waste framework report and somehow the big picture, because I believe that in the end we have to move in all the countries to holistic approaches. The successful countries are providing a holistic approach for their inhabitants. That's what I see. I would like to invite all the speakers to come back so that we can discuss a little bit further, especially concentrating on the next steps somehow. Wolfgang puts a lot of efforts on legislation. The question is, will this be enough to have some more legislation? Are there other things the Brussels bubble can do for the member states? And first, I would like to involve Ella. You are coming from waste to energy. which is not so spread, I would say, in many southern countries. It's more technology in the Nordic countries, especially Germany, Benelux, and so on. Quite critically discussed as well. Transition technology, some people say dinosaur technology, others say a very good technology to solve problems, the third parties say. So what is the viewpoint of your sector to help the countries lagging behind in moving up? Just building now 100 monsters and then the problem is solved?
Thank you, Joachim. Hello, everybody. Well, no.
No.
First of all, it's not a monster. I think waste to energy can help to treat with the waste that is not good enough for recycling. And also for the outlet from recycling facilities, sorting facilities need an outlet, a pollutant sink for the waste parts which are not good enough and which can't be used. And of course, it was mentioned, product responsibility was mentioned, recycling versus production process, recycling should be thought in production processes. And I very much agree with that, because looking at the end of life of a product, there are PFAS, there are carbon fibers, there are matters of concern in the waste that needs to be treated. And we must think more on the production side, how we will deal with the product once it becomes waste, including windmills, including all this technology, which is also necessary for renewable energy. So we should really focus more on this side in order, together with source separation, to achieve quality recycling, which we very, very much support. But we all know that there's always still some residual part, some remaining part that needs proper treatment and needs something that avoids that the pollutants are spread into the environment. And yes, I think waste to energy is part of the solution for that, because it treats this remaining residual waste, not good enough for recycling, in an environmentally sound way, producing energy out of it while replacing the use of fossil fuels. And also contributing to recycling, because from the incinerator bottom ash, the leftover from the combustion process, you can recycle the metals. They are there in a quite poor form, shape. And from the remaining mineral part of the bottom ash, you can use it as aggregate in construction works and replace gravel and sand. So how can we improve the situation? Looking at the recent Eurostat figures on municipal waste treatment in the member states, it is really frustrating to see that still 10 member states landfill more than 50%, more than half of their municipal waste. And while we are good in setting targets on paper, we don't seem to be very good in implementing them. And so it is also scary what has been said before. The tendency was already there in the former early warning processes, reports, and it continues. So maybe we have to do something. Legislation is very important, but also to do something practical. And my question or proposal for today's discussion is, we understood from Fernando Leite from Portugal, landfilling is very cheap and they would need more waste to energy capacity. They have already some, but they would need more to treat the residual waste. Many other member states which still heavily rely on landfilling, sometimes more than 80–85% of their municipal waste, what will they do with the residual waste? I mean, there are no EU funds possible for treatment plans for residual waste, and taxonomy also doesn't help. So will they ever be able or intend to build residual waste treatment plants, or will they, at least temporarily, rely on other member states' capacities? Would it be worth to discuss if we should create a platform on the European level under the control of, let's say, the Commission and the member states to make sure that no recyclable waste is treated lower in the hierarchy, but to somehow give them practical help to divert waste from landfills higher up the hierarchy, and that member states with supply help member states with demand. There's a recent study by Prognos and CE Delft, and they calculated if we wouldn't landfill waste that can be recycled or recovered anymore, we could save almost 300 million tons of CO2 equivalents by diverting waste from landfills, waste that can be recycled or used for energy recovery. That's comparatively low-hanging fruits, and considering the climate emergency, I think we need to do something practical now. So happy to hear your opinions on that.
Practical help. I think this is a very, very good topic. My topic somehow all the time. We had many years ago, before COVID, the previous Commissioner Vella, he organized these virtuous missions to the member states. I think that was a reaction to an early warning report many years ago, because he said we have to understand and to try to understand which concrete help the member states we could give to the member states. So I was asking myself, is the Commission discussing to do something like this as well? Or we have a wonderful institution of the European Commission for accession countries, TAIEX. I participated in some of the activities there many years ago. I think this is an excellent tool. But once you are a member state, they are not allowed to help you anymore, to say it's black and white. So we are a club within the European Union who treat non-members better than members. Strange, or so? How can we increase the practical help? How can we take some members at hand to say it? Well, Wolfgang, do you have any discussion inside the Commission besides improving legislation?
Yeah, of course, we have. I mentioned it already. With some with the help of external consultancies, experts, we give concrete advice to the member states how to improve, how to get on track in terms of landfill, in terms of recycling rates. But we have, and on top we have also, this is in the margins of the early warning reports, but we also give very concrete advice to the member states to their waste management plans. So, you know, every member state has to come up with a waste management plan, and we also in this kind of initiative exercise, we also give very concrete advice, and of course this advice is consistent with our whole approach in terms of making waste management more sustainable. So of course in our comment to the, let's say, Portuguese waste management plan, we are also very concretely making proposals in terms of what about on landfill and the next point. We have in our we have a very nice bouquet or a package or a group of financial support instruments for this, for a more sustainable waste management. So there are plenty of instruments, of facilities, how the financial people call it, facilities to support this transition to, let's say, better waste end-of-life treatment. But this is again in the hand of the member states, how they prioritize, where they channel these funds. And often we see in the member states at risk, or in the concerned member states, that these funds are not going into a more sustainable waste management or to achieve these I can tell you that my director, who is kind of came together with me into the circular economy directorate, he is very keen now also to have a proper follow up of the early warning report. So you met him, and he's very keen. Maybe he's not such a big fan of these specific country visits. This might also have because especially if it is very high level, you have a lot of political let's say vague commitments, but in the end it doesn't materialize. So we want really now. We have a waste task force, and in this waste task force, we will really carve out very concrete measures how we can really do better, and trying to avoid that the next early warning report for the 2030 will have even more let's say non-compliances or more problematic cases than Mr. Nelen already. The trend Mr. Nelen already presented. So this is really one of our priorities, because also it is a little bit against the background, and this is maybe something that might be new for you, that we are let's say the current college is let's call it Green Deal College. They came up with a lot of very good initiatives to make the Europe and also the waste sector more sustainable, to increase resource efficiency or circularity. But the next, let's say, college might, or at least in the short term, focus more on issues like consolidation and implementation, and making, let's say, also work the legislation that is already there, or vitalize the legislation which is already published, and not to produce so much new legislation.
I'm happy to hear about this and the thoughts, and I would like to involve Yanis perhaps again. I had the pleasure to meet, I think, minimum 2 of your ministers of environment in the past, and I've always seen there is goodwill if you talk to the people and you hear about all the offers from the Commission. But if I come back 1 year later, nothing has happened, to say it black and white again. Yanis, what can we do to move your ministries and your authorities?
Yeah. I think that what could be helpful is that try to put the issues on the table and organize meetings with the new Minister of Environment. Well, after the elections because there are elections in the local authorities next month, and try to be very frank and very, I would say, not be around the bush. This could be, I think that to be honest, the only solution, the European Union could pay, and the people from Europe would play an important role, because I don't believe that we are capable of convincing them on our own. And I think they will listen a lot to the European Union and to the people from Europe here in Greece. And just a comment, because I would like to what I had in our mind is that The problem is that the local collection and recycling is in the responsibility of local authorities. Local authorities are in tremendous shortage of financial and human resources for the time being here in Greece. So I don't think that it is quite uncertain that whether the local authorities could effectively cope with the new role with a more complicated collection system. For example, by waste stream, 4 streams for recyclables, and all this. One solution could be to actually have the regional association of municipalities to undertake a more decisive role in collection, in collaboration perhaps with private waste contractors. And of course, I agree with the other speakers that bio-waste, separating and bio-waste collection is the key, because more than 40% of the municipal solid waste in Greece is bio-waste. So this is the key for improving recycling. And the good news is that there are several waste processing plants that have started finally in Greece, and there will be more in the near future. So bio-waste recycling figures will be higher in the next years. That's
So
it.
some good news as well, and we have to come and to take you at hand a bit. Constant pressure in a positive way. That's to sum it up.
A lot of pressure in a positive way. I agree.
Yeah. Dirk, I would like to involve you as well. I know you as a person that is leaving a lot your desk to go to the field to understand. I know in your role as co-chair of the ISWA working group recycling, I can only promote this working group. You are doing a lot of good work there. Very important discussion, transfer of knowledge. So if you would have the resources available, what would be your idea to take? Let's take Greece or Portugal or whatever country. How we in Europe, the stakeholders, the Commission, how could we help them to speed up?
Yeah, I think that it was already within the presentation, but we often forget that the countries, there's not like a European average country. There's no average country. All countries have very specific characteristics in population density, GDP. It's all countries are very different, and although we can see these very different contexts, we are trying, and the Commission is also doing the same to have the same targets for each of these contexts. And I think that we still have to build further on the basis for proper and well-performing waste management. And what resulted from the 2018 early warning report was also a set of recommendations, country-specific recommendations. And part of the work that we did during the analysis was also to ask the countries, okay, these were the recommendations, what did you do with it? What did you implement here? And I will not name the country that I had to review regarding to the recommendations, but in fact it was very poor. How the recommendations were put into practice. So yeah, I'm still in doubt whether it's a good idea to have these all one size fits all approach also in legislation. I also wanted to comment on the proposal of Ella regarding to incineration. One of the conclusions of the early warning report was also that none of the lowest performing countries had incineration capacity, while all of the best performing countries have incineration capacity. So this, of course, there's no causal relation between it. At least we haven't been able to prove that you need incineration capacity in order to climb higher on the waste hierarchy. But incineration is indeed an important element of waste management. And if even if you do recycling and you have a lot of volumes, a lot of throughput, and you start to look more and more into the quality aspects of recycling, which is the main barrier. Our recycling processes in the member states, they don't deliver quality. And they don't deliver a material output that is ready to be used in industry. Not at all. It's very far from that. So if you start being more picky on the quality, you have to be more picky on the input quality of your waste also. So you might have bigger volumes that are better incinerated. And of course with energy recovery, but that's not so much of an issue anymore. And the incineration without energy recovery is really becoming very rare in Europe. So yeah, these are. I think we have to keep on building on the basis for good waste management. We have from this exercise we have a lot of good practices defined. We also are continuing to process the results and to make more visible the relations between instruments and the result regarding to recycling and waste management in general. So the exercise is not finished here. It's a continued exercise. But money, I don't think money is the biggest problem. Since your question was, what if you had more money? What would you do with it? I don't think money is the main issue here.
So it seems we have enough carrots, but now we need the stick. If
that could be a conclusion.
If we
if I may take over this, because this is a little bit also indeed this is a little bit you use carrots and sticks, and I see also two questions in the chat on a little bit on this issue. First of all, I would say we have a lot of proof that we do not, let's say, take an average approach, or we really have a very targeted analysis and have then come up with a tailored set of recommendations, but unfortunately they are poorly followed or taken over. Therefore, and also we have this this experience in all our waste legislation that be it the industry or the economic operators, or be it the member states, which are traditionally in the focus of the directives of the legislative rules. This is, let's say, the logic next steps, that if we see that, for instance, these targets, we fail to, for instance, in packaging, to reduce with this instrument, with kind of vague essential requirements to reduce packaging waste or to make it more sustainable. If with these soft tools, we have to come up with something more meaningful and more intrusive. And this means the stick. We have already the own resource decision, the so-called plastic tax, and now we come up in the new packaging legislation with these product requirements. This is kind of a game changer when it comes to also to the whole packaging and packaging waste sector, and we will come up with more. We will follow this line because the current instruments, they did not deliver. And therefore I can tell you, and I did not yet mention it, but with the traditional instrument that we always have, and this is what, coming back to my director, who is a lawyer and who was very long time in the directorate for the infringement procedures, this is also something that we will have to see in the margins of the follow-up with for the early warning reports, that we not only have to check what is the risk, but also those member states who already fail the existing targets. And if we can on top say yes, and on top we have a trend that shows that you are even performing poorer, then this is a very strong case for an infringement procedure. But this is a parallel work strand in terms of I think we are much more, let's say, convinced that these big challenges, we have to also to come up with new instruments, with new sticks.
So I hear and see we will see a much more active commission on the member state level somehow. I'm much more involved, and I think this is very, very good news.
Yes, but just we are also aware, and this is what we did, what I experience now in my normal day. If we come up with such very concrete requirements with really hard legislation, if we call the targets at member state level not very, at least put it very hard to implement in real life, in practice. But if we really come with this hard legislation, intrusive measures on the operators, then we have, of course, big resistance, opposition from those operators who might lose market shares, or who might have to change or have to do a transition to something. So this is what happens in packaging currently. This is why the file is so hot at the moment, because here we really do something that has a big economic impact, huge benefits, but also in this transition it would mean you have losers in that process, and they of course will fight against these developments.
Yeah, I think it's a logical consequence from the move, because we are not dealing or not discussing only waste management anymore. With the move to reuse, not only in packaging, I think we discuss it, reuse, repair, whatever, in the other product streams as well. We are more moving to a product regulation, and not so much anymore in the waste regulation. And this is, of course, influencing the whole business model, and not only how we deal with it later. And I think this is, of course, logical that many people are acting in a different way.
Yeah, indeed. So just to make the link, what happens now also in the textile sector, as I mentioned already, we established the first time an EU-wide EPR system as a first step, and then also with respect to the comment, landfill is of course the worst, but with incineration you only cope with. So we really, for instance, in the textile, we really want to have as much as possible separate collection in order to avoid that it lands up in the municipal waste, in the mixed waste. So in the mixed waste it goes either in incineration, and this is where we really strive for more reuse, and this is our model for the future, that we have more circularity, more reuse, and reuse is by far the most important instrument to have more circularity, and to have instrument for waste reduction, and also but the first step is that we have to have a separate collection for these valuable materials, and then we have a sorting, and then we have a sorting into either reuse or into recycling, and then the next step is that we have a high quality recycling, and this high quality recycling means we achieve, for instance, via recycled content targets in the specific materials we are talking. So, and this brings me back to the whole value chain that we create with our new legislative architecture. The value chain starts already at the product design. So linked with the ESPR developments that we have, the consistent approach says that you already at the beginning of the production of any material, that you think about the whole value chain downstream, and this is really the, let's say, our vision for the future of the waste.
Yeah, thank you. We are coming now more or less to the end of our short webinar, perhaps also to ISWA, Solid Waste Association, we should rethink it. Solid Resource Association, Resource Management Association, because we really have to broaden our point of view and our expertise in the future, from my point of view. Perhaps to the speakers, to each of you, to close it and to give you a chance to say something final. One wish to Europe, to Brussels, so not only to the Commission. I would like to include all the associations and stakeholders. If you have one wish, what could we do to help you? Fernando, are you still with us? What would be your wish to us?
Yes, in our case, Portugal needs a lot the support of the European Commission, because we have a lot of investments to do to change the model of the waste sector in Portugal. We spend a lot of money closing dump sites 20 years ago, but now the most important focus of our activity is to think that waste is a resource, so we need to prepare better our materials to the industry sector. So to do that, we need a new model of sorting plants. We need to think that the anaerobic digestion and the production of biomethane is very important. We need to think in our waste to energy plant to think in how to capture the carbon and how to utilize that products in another sustainable product. So we are going to prepare some notes to send to European Commission and also to ISWA to help us, the country, to change this difficult picture we have with more than 50% of waste going to landfill. We need to change immediately this picture. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Fernando. Marius, are you still with us? I think we lost him. But Yanis, then to you, a final word. Your wish to Brussels.
very close management and monitoring of the of the measures and of the implementation of the legislation. The legislation is here. We don't need any more legislation, at least in Greece. But a very close monitoring of how this legislation is implemented by European people. Sorry to say that, but I don't believe that we can do it within the Greek borders anymore.
Thanks a lot, and perhaps we can see something when we come in the end of November to Athens and use the opportunity.
Of course.
Yeah.
We'll be very glad to see you in November.
Yes. So, any final word from Wolfgang and Dirk? Did you learn something today? Are you even more motivated to support our countries?
I really am, and the one of the reasons that I accepted this invitation is what is always striking me is the lack of learning lessons from initiatives and things that have been implemented in other member states. So there's so much to learn, not only about best practices, but also about what I would call worst practices. Often you see countries trying to implement certain measures or doing certain actions of which we could reasonably forecast that things will not work out fine. So I think that a platform like this one offered by ISWA also is very relevant to learn from each other. We don't have to invent for each country again and again and again a waste management system. So and therefore I'm very grateful to the representatives of the countries that are weak performers but that have really something to say that we should listen very carefully to.
Thank you. Wolfgang?
Yes, well, let me, even though being still a kind of a newcomer to the scene, let me put a little bit water into the wine. First of all, the wine is, or I appreciate a lot that you took this initiative, let's say from the EPR scheme side, to have your experience to integrate this. I can reassure you that this is really an important work strand for us. As I mentioned, we really want to focus more in the future on implementation and enforcement instead of just being a new machine for creating new rules, new legislation. Now the water is a little bit that I miss from, let's say, from the not only from the 3 member states presenting today. I miss a little bit the awareness that it is not only high time, it is a high time to really act. And what Dirk just mentioned, on the one hand, we have already we have lost so much time to make the move into the right direction, but really nowadays I think the unsustainable situation in the waste sector, in the traditional waste management, is so obvious with all these natural catastrophes over the summer and over the year in Europe, and our citizens, they are really requiring that we have to act and we have to be committed and not just. This is again coming to the water in the wine. I still feel a little bit the old-fashioned reflex to say, okay, it is a political problem, or we really need to come up with a new with a change in the mindset, and the challenges are so so enormous that we really cannot just say, okay, let's continue and let's see where we can do this or that and where we can learn. We really, it is really high time.
I think these were perfect final words for this webinar. Stop talking, just let's start doing. Finally, let's do all the things that we can contribute to it. Thanks a lot to the speakers. Thanks a lot to the participants. And I would like to quote Ella again in the end. There are so many low-hanging fruits. So minimum this should be done now in the next months, and this would already be a big step forward. Thanks a lot. Thanks for ISWA for hosting it. If you are not a member of ISWA, I can only promote that you join us with all the different stakeholders. Of course, we don't agree, but we have very good discussions, and by this, we are making a little bit moving forward. Thanks a lot. See you soon, and all the best. Bye-bye. Ciao. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.